Howdy folks, I'm Owen Williams, Ritual Brewing Company. I'm here to show you our brewery and give you a small tour. Come on in. We're 23,700 square feet underneath the roof, which is just over half an acre. We wound up meeting each other way back when in about 2010, Steve and myself. I come from a professional brewing background, was at Riverside Brewing Company, and I was at BJ's where I built 11 breweries for him and 86 restaurants. Steve had another little path where he was CFO of a large company. So he is the bean counter. He's the smart one of the group, and I'm the better looking one of the group. So he wound up doing home brewing in his garage and such, and we met one day, and he said, would you like to come over to my house and go home brewing with me? Well, there's a whole other backstory to that, and I'll let you read a little bit more about that. But I'm here to give you the tour of the brewery. So the tour starts here. This is our brew house. Our brew house is where we make a sweet liquid that's called wort. That wort is eventually going to be beer for us. But let me draw you back in. The first thing I want to show you is that this is a custom-built brew house for us that was made by Specific Mechanical. We designed this, I gave it all the specifications, and it's very shiny, it's very neat, it's very high-tech for what we have got going on here. The very first part of our brewery is going to start with what's called a grist hopper. This is where the milled grain goes and is stored usually overnight before we start the brewing process. There are four main ingredients to beer: water, malt, hops, and yeast. So we're going to eventually mix our grain, our grist, with water in order to get some sweet liquid, much like making tea or like making coffee. It's pretty much the same way. This is a hot liquor tank. Liquor just means that it's water. This is what the TTB and ABC people want us to call this product, but it's just hot water. This is where we generate hot water from. This is ultimately going to be mixing with our grain in order to get that sugar from it. So, hot water tank, a mash lauter tun. This is where it mashes, it cooks the grain, it mixes with the grain. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And then it goes into the kettle, and then there is a cold liquor tank. I have to say something special about our water. It is probably the best water in the world. We draw our water from the same aquifer as Arrowhead Spring water. If you don't have great water, you're not going to have great beer. Yes, you can make beer out of duck pond water, but what's it going to taste like? Duck pond water, right? Okay, it won't kill you. There are no pathogens that can survive in beer, so we're not really worried about that. This is how beer saved the world, is because you could drink it and not die from dysentery or some other deadly disease, but you're able to go ahead and wind up with some hydration and be able to subsist. So, back to where we were at here. So this is a 30-barrel brew house. A barrel is 31 gallons. So we can make 930 gallons of hot sweet liquid, not beer yet, at a time. This is a triple batch of hot water. And the reason we have it is so that we can do more than one batch of beer a day. So I'm going to show you the mill here in a second, but we take our grain. This is a malted barley or a malted wheat. Malt just means that it's been taken out of the field, it's been allowed to grow for about 3 or 4 days, and then it's roasted or it's kilned at certain temperatures in order to give it different colors and different types of flavors. This is where that malt flavor comes from in the beer, and this is where the color comes from. It's how long and hot that they roast it. So then we mill it, and it gets augered into the grist hopper. That grist hopper holds about 3,000 pounds of grain. Our normal grist charge, or how much grain we put into a beer, is about 2,000 pounds. So that's our normal batch. So it gets mixed with hot water at a hydration point, and then it goes into this mash tun, TUN, and it goes in here and it cooks for about an hour to maybe 2 hours. Mixing the grain, the grist, with hot water activates and deactivates certain enzymes in order for it to cut up carbohydrates. Carbohydrates just a big starch where we're going to chop it up into little tiny pieces and make it into simple sugars. That's all we're looking for in here. So it cooks for about 2 hours in here. There is a false bottom in here and as a screen, and you have to think about this like a coffee filter. In other words, you're putting your grain or your ground coffee, your ground malt with water, and now you're going to make an extraction from that. It's going to be a flavored extraction. So that extraction comes up through a series of pumps and goes into what's called a kettle. So activating, deactivating certain enzymes in the mash tun, and it gives us soluble sugars. And these are sugars that are very easily to break down by the yeast in order to ultimately give us alcohol. So it's cooked from there, it's strained off, this hot sweet liquid then goes into the kettle. The kettle is done for we boil things for a couple of reasons. The number one thing is to kill everything. So this pasteurizes all of the bugs and bacteria and other types of microflora and fauna we don't want to survive in here. So it boils and kills everything in there. During the boiling process, we add hops for a couple different reasons. At the beginning of the boil for bitterness, at the middle of the boil for flavor, and at the end for aroma. When you taste a beer, you will smell malty sweetness, and then there'll be a floral bouquet that comes through. Those are the hops in it. You have to balance that malty sweetness with some hoppy bitterness in order for the beer to become balanced. Otherwise, it's going to be too sweet or it's going to be too bitter. So you want to be able to balance that beer, and this is where the art and science comes into play. So after it's boiled for about an hour to an hour and a half, we put it through a heat exchanger. This is what's interesting here about us and what we did. We both grew up in the 80s, and we remember when our governor at the time, and we had severe droughts, and there was a gas shortage, or there's also a water shortage in that. So we were thinking, this is probably gonna happen again, and it's happening again. So what we wind up doing is taking our filtered water, another 90-barrel tank, that's 2,970 gallons, and we get it nice and cold, and it's just above freezing. Well, when we do what's called a heat exchanger, now that we've boiled our hot sweet liquid and we've added our hops to it, now it's time to put it into what's called a fermenter. But you don't want to put it in a fermenter hot. You want to cool it down very, very quickly. So we take and we put that hot sweet liquid through a heat exchanger. It's a plate heat exchanger. So imagine hot sweet liquid going through the heat exchanger and then cold water going the opposite direction. So they pass between some stainless plates, and so the cold water goes in and comes out hot. The hot sweet liquid goes in hot and comes out nice and cool. What's neat about this is we wind up salvaging, reusing all of that cold filtered water that we find so precious. And instead of going down the drain, it goes into our hot liquor tank, goes back into our hot water tank. It's so hot. How hot is it? It's so hot that we have to temper it down in order to reuse it, if we wanted to use it right away. So it goes in, it's a very efficient system. So none of our heat exchange water goes down the drain. A lot of little breweries or a lot of other breweries, their biggest waste for water is it going down the drain because of this operation. We don't want to do that, we salvage it all. So we're very proud of that. So once that hot sweet liquid gets cooled down, we give it a breath of fresh air. What's your number one priority in life? Breathing. If you don't breathe, nothing else can exist. So it's the same thing here. We're going to give this hot sweet liquid that's now cooled down a breath of fresh air. We use aviators breathing oxygen in order to aerate some of this hot sweet liquid. This is the only time that oxygen with beer is any good, and it's actually not beer yet. Why? Because we have to go through a thing called fermentation. This is where the beer is made. We have 4 60-barrel fermenters, which are double batches, and we have 2 90-barrel fermenters, which are triple batches, and then we have some other supporting equipment, and I'll show you what that is. So in each one of these fermenters, so we've taken this hot sweet liquid, we've cooled it down, we've given it a breath of fresh air. Everything on this side is sanitized. We don't want any bugs on this side, not bugs like cockroaches or ants or anything else like this. We're talking about microbes. Any other microbes might give the beer an off flavor or a flavor that's not desirable for what we want to do. And each culture of yeast that we're going to be using has a different type of ester to it. Imagine Wonder Bread versus sourdough bread. The difference is a different type of yeast. Well, the one yeast is sour, the other yeast is not sour. So it's the same thing for beer. Each beer style should have its own yeast style. So we replicate beer styles that are famous from throughout the world. We replicate them here and we put our spin on them, and we try to make them as true to style as possible. So as it's going into the fermenter, it's got its breath of fresh air. We inoculate that hot sweet liquid that's now cooled down with a very particular yeast strain. And the yeast strain will go in, it will uptake a bunch of oxygen, it will make a ton of babies, it will start consuming the sugar. It's an osmotic process. Start consuming the sugar, and it will have byproducts of alcohol and CO2. I usually say that the yeast breathe air, make a bunch of babies, eat the sugar, fart CO2, and pee alcohol. And that's usually what they're doing. So in here we have a capacity of 420 barrels fermentation capacity, and we can turn these tanks around in about every 21 days. Gives us a total capacity throughout the year of about 8,000 barrels. So we made this beer yesterday. This is Hop-O-Matic. This is a 30 barrel batch in here, so it's only half full in the tank. And the hot sweet liquid went in nice and cool with a breath of fresh air. We pitched a certain culture of yeast, and now we have fermentation happening. This is how beer is made, and this is where beer is made. We don't really make beer, we just make the yeast very, very comfortable. That's what we wind up doing. We're more or less like yeast apiarists. We try and herd these yeast all over the place and try and coach and encourage them into making beer for us. So this is fermentation. This, because it's an ale, it'll ferment for about 21 days and then go into cold conditioning. Well, it'll ferment for about 7 to 8 days, and then it'll go into cold conditioning or lagering. All beers are lagered, that means cold conditioning. It'll lager there for about another 2 weeks. And after that time, it's ready to go. It's ready to consume. So once the beer is done with fermentation, we put it into what's called a bright beer tank. This is where the government becomes very concerned with what I do, because they want to have their taxes. We pay twice as much in taxes as it does to produce the beer. So it's very expensive as far as taxes. Now, once the beer is done and it's fermented and it's lagered and it's ready to go, we'll put it into the bright beer tank. And you can see this tank here has approximately 40 some barrels of beer, which is over 80 kegs. And we force carbonate this beer. We give it its effervescence, and we inject a sterile CO2, carbon dioxide, in order to give it that nice little bubblies that you so expect in beer. And then as we move right on down, and it might sit in here for maybe a week, a little bit less than that, it can turn around and go very, very quickly. And you can see that they're kegging down here, and I'll get to that here in just a second. So bright beer tank, and this is the area, this is the delivery room. This is where all of the beer is born. This is where we keg it, this is where we bottle it, this is where we can it. It's all done right here. And we're gonna move right through here real quick. We had to stay out of the area because there were some chemicals and some other things going on there. I don't have my personal protection equipment on, so I don't want to go into an area and become hazardous. So you can tell that Rob here is kegging off beer. There's a keg filler. He's taking the beer out of the small little tank and he's putting it into the kegs. What's neat about this small little tank is that it is a dual purpose tank. It goes into propagating yeast, and it goes into making small batches of specialty beer for us. So where it would normally cost us about $1,000 to buy a culture of yeast for a tank, I can buy a little tiny test tube for about $5. I can grow this yeast up, because it's exactly the same thing as what a normal laboratory would do. It would grow this beer up, and then the beer would be, or the yeast would be ready to use into a pitchable amount for beer. So, going right along here, we do a lot of microbiological testing here. We're very proud of our lab procedures, where sometimes people don't know why their beer goes bad, or it goes south, or it doesn't have the same flavors that they would want. You need to be able to qualify and quantify what is in your beer microbiologically, how stable it is. So we have a lab, and usually during the tour, we don't take people into the lab because it's locked, but I'm going to show you the lab. We play puzzles all day. No, that's not what we do. Those are for somebody else. This is a lab, and it winds up testing all of our beer for us, looking for respiratory deficiencies, any other type of bacteria that might be growing in there, anything that might make the beer unpleasant for you, we take a look at. We've got an autoclave, which kills everything, microwave, which also kills everything, microscope, incubator, stirring plates, shaker plates, photospectrometer, and a centrifuge, and some other fun stuff around here. But this is our lab, and people don't come in here. Very proud of our lab. We are on the forefront of laboratories in breweries. A lot of people come here and learn from us on how to work in a laboratory, what they should be looking for in their beer, and so we're happy with that. So now let's come on right on down. So before I go into the lab, I always talk about the keg washing, because if you don't have good clean kegs or a package to put your good clean beer in, it's no sense in trying to ship it out. So all of the kegs are cleaned outside, and then they're cleaned and sanitized, and all the oxygen that's in the keg is removed. So now you have a clean and sanitary keg on the inside, and this is where we put our clean and sanitary beer inside of that. And that's how you get it from where you're at. Now there's two things you could do here. You could walk them by the mill and go outside, or you can go back over into the cold box. We're gonna go by the mill first. So come on by here. You wanna stay away from the chemicals, because the chemicals are dangerous and you don't have your PPE on, and you shouldn't be messing with that. They can get very dangerous. We do have a van that we take out onto events sometimes. It's a little bit dirty, but it's gonna be clean today, I understand. They will go in, we support our community by donating beer and serving our beer and helping them raise monies for different types of events. But it's got to be a good charity, one that we believe in, one that we think is important. So let's really start at the beginning of the process. What? You mean we weren't at the beginning? No, we weren't. This is the beginning of the process. This is a 60,000 pound silo. This silo contains American Pale 2-row malt. This is the base unit for all of our beer. This is where we get most of our carbohydrates, where we get most of our sugar, where we get most of everything in any batch of beer. It's mostly 85 to 90% of this grain mixed with some other specialty grains. It doesn't take much of the small specialty grains in order to give you color and to give you flavor. So it goes from the silo, and then it goes into the mill room. I like having a room for a mill because it gets very dirty and dusty, and it's easier to clean. There's a lot of bacteria that can happen in malt dust. Plus it's carcinogenic, so you don't want to breathe this stuff. So you want to be very cautious. So it gets augured out of the silo. It goes into what's called a counterweight dump scale. So every 14.5 pounds, it dumps a batch of grain in here. It goes through the mill. It gets ground. It doesn't get pulverized. It doesn't get turned into flour. It just gets cracked. And that's what's important, just enough to break up that surface area. These are the specialty malts I was talking about, and you can tell there's just small amounts in here. These are all open bags. We have other bags over here that are full. But specialty malts, giving your color and your different flavors. Why is a dark beer dark? It's because they put dark grain in it. Why is our red beer red? Because we put red grain in it. Where does the malty sweetness come from? The specialty grains. So we take a certain amount of the specialty grains, usually about between 5 to 15% of the specialty malts, and they'll go into the mill, they get cracked, and then it gets up and augured, up and over into the beginning where we started talking about the grist hopper. The process for us to mill is about 2 hours. A normal batch, we can do about 1,000 pounds an hour. And that's the way that one gets going. So now you can see we have shelves of specialty malts. And we have a different malts for different vendors. We do contract brewing. There you might have noticed a Main Street keg. We do brew beer for Main Street. We do a real nice job for him. He can't keep up with his own consumption, his own production, so we help him out. I have 2 bottling lines, a 22-ounce bottling line and a 12-ounce bottling line. So all of the bottled product you get all comes from these machines. We take it, we put it over here, and it goes back into the delivery room where we were kegging things off. We can do about a case a minute. So about every hour we can do about a pallet of beer. We have a small pilot system that was in Steve's garage for a long time, and sometimes we do test batches on there, or our staff will get together and they will do a home brew, and then sometimes we put that on tap. So we've seen the brew house, the hot side, we've seen the fermentation area, we've seen the lab, we've seen the keg washing, we've seen the silo outside, we've seen the van, we've seen the mill, we've seen the bottling line, but the part that's really fun that I like showing people is the cold spot. How cold is it? Well, if you know, freezing is 32 degrees, so we're at 33. So we're pretty freaking cold. What's neat about this area? These are our different yeast cultures. So we store all of our yeast cultures and reuse them over and over and over again. As long as they're strong, as long as they're viable, we can use them. Plus, we keep all of our different cultures together. Like that sourdough bread I was telling you about, that's got a separate culture. Like the Wonder Bread, that's got its separate culture. And then, this is where all of the beer is being served. So it'll all come out of a keg, and it'll all go through a line, and it all goes in through the wall. And then that's where you get your beer. So when is your beer born? Today. As soon as you grab it, it's born right now. So these are all of the beers that we have on ready to go. There's some other beers that are conditioning and some other beers for backup. We also have a ton of beer to sell to the public. If you want a keg for a party or an event, we do sell that. We also sell cases of beer. This is where this all comes from. Questions, comments, editorials. I never show them the boiler room because it's just doesn't really make a whole bunch of sense for people to talk about a boiler room. It's just a room that's kind of hot and it's got a piece of equipment in it, no big deal. What I do like to show them is our safety shower. We do use a safety shower all the time. You get something in your eyes, or you have a heat exposure because of the hot sweet liquid, or you had a chemical exposure, you would have to get in the safety shower. And so this is a very important piece of equipment. I've had a lot of friends and that have been hurt because they didn't have the safety shower by, and this is why we have a safety shower here. Any questions? Oh, the other thing we didn't talk about, so how good is our beer? Well, you can take a look at the medals that we have. We've won the national a couple of times with gold medals. We've won the state at least once, Best of Show, and we've just recently won in Chicago, Festival of Barrel-Aged Beers for best barrel-aged beer in the nation for that year. So we have plenty of those ready to go. We know that we have got great beer. We love producing great beer for great people and having a great time doing it. That's our mantra. If we don't have great beer, then nothing else counts. We've got to have that. And we have about 20 employees, and 3 of those are full-time, and the rest of them are all part-time. I'm trying to think if there's anything else we needed to talk about. Kettle Whirlpool, old liquor tank, Miller, keg washer, lab, mill,
sales cooler.
Sales cooler. We also have 1 sales cooler. So our big deal is not just to sell it here on site by the pint or by the crowler fill or the growler fill, but we also sell it at other distributors. This is a place that goes to Stater Brothers, Albertsons, Vons, those type of places, the grocery outlets. And so this is where all of our sales, this is our beer that we should turn around and sell about every week. I'd love to see that. And we usually don't take people in here just because there's no sense for it. There's nothing in here to see other than maybe some trash. Okay, we're good.
Yeah.
I think that's about it. Anything else?
Maybe just what the barrels, if they have any purpose that are around.
The barrels right now used to have a beer that was stored in them for several years. And we've since taken all that beer out of the barrels. They're no longer aging in the barrels. If you let beer age too long in barrels, it will go south eventually. South, I mean by it'll pick up an oxidative flavor, such as cardboard or wet cardboard or something along that line. Or it might pick up a biological where it turns sour or pithy or tart. We want to stay away from that. So the moment it starts going to, it gets aged, we pull it out of the barrel. The barrels all now have just water in them, and they just work as ambiance right now. Sorry, but we don't sell them because we don't have enough of them anymore. Maybe one day we will.
Okay.
Anything else?
What's your favorite Ritual beer?
The beer in front of me, the one that I'm drinking, because they're all my children, and I love all my children. And it all depends on probably the day and maybe what I'm eating with it. Let's say if it's a burger and fries, I'll take a Pilsner all day long. Of course, I like it with the X Red because I like the malty and hoppiness. Then I could have it with the Hop-O-Matic because the Hop-O-Matic with the hoppy bouquet that goes with it always goes great with my tomatoes and fresh onions on it. And the pickles adds a little bit of tartness, goes back and forth of sweet and tart. It's just that's a fun experience for me. So it all depends on really what I'm feeling like that day and what's going to happen. That's my favorite Ritual beer.
All right.
Anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay, cool.